the clicker. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We are very excited to show you what we've been cooking up. We are the Microsoft Purview Data Security Marketing and Engineering team. I'm Shilpa Bothra, joined by my two amazing colleagues, Maithili and Tala. And before we get into it, I would love if you could humor me for 10 seconds. Everybody in the audience, please take your cell phones. If you can just take them out, unlock it, and then hand it to the person sitting right next to you. Oh, don't be like these two, and I'll ask them to now leave the stage because they're being very bad influence on all of you. But I did sense some hesitation, and it's okay. It's fair to have that concern, to have that hesitation. Your phone is a window into who you are as a person. It has your personal information, it has your financial information, so it's naturally okay to be concerned when you hand that information to someone else who's sitting next to you and you do not know that person. The same thing applies to your organizational data. Data is what powers your business. It gives you competitive edge, it gives you so much insights. Now imagine if all of that was not protected and went into the hands of someone that wasn't supposed to have access to it. It could actually have tremendous consequences for your business. It can cost you millions of dollars in just fines, it can do reputation damage, but most importantly, you can lose customer trust over it. But sweat not, because for the next 43 minutes, we'll talk about how you can discover the risks to your organization